What's up everyone, it's Dion, and lately I've been playing lots of video games and exposing myself to all the latest offerings that the entertainment industry has been pushing out. From fighting crazy gods to demon women that I want to step on me, gaming lately has been pretty good, I gotta say. But with every new cycle of entertainment there comes the criticisms and bombs where creators try to swing with new ideas hoping they'll hit more than they miss. And of course we can't forget the many websites and journalists who often say they want more representation or diversity but dismantle their own opinions within the very articles they write. And if you're looking at this video and going, hasn't Dion done this video before? Is he off his meds again? Well, first off, maybe. And secondly, I like to think of this video idea to be something of a series here on this godforsaken channel, where we can all come together and discuss the latest high points and abominations places like the games industry and Hollywood have been creating. So let's explore even further into just why nobody likes woke characters, but firstly I want to talk about a character that I actually think was done very well. And that character in question is Prince Dion from Final Fantasy XVI, and I should also say, relax, there won't be any spoilers in this video. Anyway, Dion on paper is your typical westernized diversity character. He's royalty, he's handsome, and he's gay as hell. But whereas if Dion was written by Western creators, that's all he would be. His personality would begin and end with the fact that he likes a little sausage between his buns. Thankfully, Dion was created by the fine folks over at Square Enix, and his sexuality is but a facet of his multi-dimensional personality. Instead of focusing solely on his love of hunky guys, Square makes Dion into a complicated character that is defined equally by his immense strength and his horrific failures. For those who haven't played Final Fantasy XVI, Dion is the dominant of Bahamut, who's the king of dragons. This basically means Dion can transform at will into a massive badass dragon and burn his enemies to cinders. But what makes Dion such a great and honestly the gold standard when it comes to creating an LGBT character is that his flaws and weaknesses define him just as much as his strengths do. He's a powerful sovereign with an inferiority complex that can raise entire kingdoms into dust if he wanted to. But his insecurities and outsider-like social standings makes Dion extremely compelling and a really great character. Him being gay is but a single part of his character. Honestly, if you want a shining example of what woke creators should be making, it's Dion to a T. He's everything these woke creators wish they could have, but the difference between him and the multitude of terribly written, westernized LGBT characters is that Dion has actual flaws and troubles, and like I said already, he's far more than just what he likes in the sack. So really, when journalists and writers wonder why people don't like many LGBT characters, it's not because they're gay, it's because they're not written to be anything but flesh trophies to be paraded around for virtue points. Dion is the prime example of what happens when the creators behind something make a compelling character first, instead of just wanting to push sexual preferences instead. Dion really is a refreshing and very well made character, and it's no surprise he's made by Eastern creators, because it's Asian-centric media in general that absolutely shits all over most of westernized content these days anyway. And speaking of Western media that shows the polar opposite, let's speak about Transformers. Recently, the new movie Transformers Rise of the Beast has come out in theaters, and it's not doing too hot in the box office. But what I really want to discuss here is how in this new movie it's confirmed that one of the Autobots is actually trans. Yeah, you heard that right. Late last year, it was confirmed well before release that the motorcycle Autobot RC would indeed be a Transformer. Apparently, in the IDW comics, RC said they were forged as male but recognizes herself as the person they were always meant to be. Mind you, Transformers are robots who have no genitals and are literally, well, giant robots. But of course, this is the modern era and everything must conform to whatever is politically correct these days. Honestly, it just seems like Hasbro and IDW hired a bunch of diversity-craved young creators who likely graduated with gender study degrees, and they saw the trans in Transformers and just began salivating at the mouth. Also, it turns out RC isn't even the first canonically trans Transformer in the Transformer franchise. Goddamn, how many times will I say Transformers in this video? Anyway, the first is a duo of characters within a comic series called Transformers Lost Light. with the duo robots called Anode and Lug being the first transgender lesbian couple in a series about robots who transform into vehicles. What? Apparently this Lost Light book was consulted by a transgender reviewer named Rachel Stevens, and it's a book series that promotes trans ideology within the confines of Transformers, which again are about giant robots that turn into cars. And sometimes dinosaurs. Also, Rachel Stevens identifies as someone who participates in trans lesbian couples, which is what Anode and Lug are, so they basically self-inserted themselves as robots. Lovely. While Transformers could be seen as an allegory for trans identity since they're born as one thing and then assume the identity of something else, at the same time it's also kind of just convenient pandering at its core. Because like I said, Transformers are robots. Apparently they can reproduce, but it's nothing like humans can do. This form of reproduction is called budding, and basically two Transformers form a mitosis-like structure where the two Transformers can create a liquid metal substance from within their body that eventually can become another Transformer. But from what I understand, this budding act doesn't have any strict guidelines. So could Optimus Prime and Megatron get drunk over some diesel fuel and bud themselves so hard until one of them energons all over the other's face and create a Optimus Tron baby? I guess so. Not that I would ever pay money to see Optimus Prime mount Megatron, but if I had to guess, I'm sure there's Rule 34 art of this very concept, which no, I will not look that up. I will instead just live in blissful ignorance to the possible existence of such art. Actually, you know what? I'll go look it up. 1 second. Okay, yeah. Yep, that exists alright. Did I just see a pregnant Optimus Prime riding Megatron like a horse in a bedroom while other Transformers watch as it happens? I sure did, fellas. And now I'm probably on a list, but you're welcome. Don't say I don't love you. Oh great, there's also even art of Optimus Prime penetrating Starscream from behind while Megatron lies drunk in the background. Why are people like this? What compels people to make things like this? You know what? I don't want to know. So let's just move on. But the fact things like trans lesbian couples have to be included in a series like Transformer just kind of shows that where there's a will, Western creators will definitely find a way. Then of course there's DC Comics, who's been reeling in losses from flops like Black Adam, Shazam, and The Flash. And even though all of these movies flopped and DC Comics' sales of actual comics are kind of in the dumps, they're now releasing a DC Pride book which is targeted at young readers. While making content for young people is nothing new, DC promoting this kind of book shows the company hasn't really learned from their losses in the past. DC Comics and Warner Bros. As a whole went into such debt because they were already making content that nobody wanted to buy. This included stuff like gay young Superman and even retconning the sexuality of other characters like Alan Scott, who's one of the Green Lanterns. During this push for DC Pride, two characters were prominently featured, which are Midnighter and Apollo, who are a gay couple. And at one point in the comic, it shows both Midnighter and Apollo interacting with unsupervised children during a Pride event, which isn't exactly the best way to push your ideology. Remember that Nick Merckx and the Call of Duty boycott stems from the concept of these groups refusing to leave children alone. And the armor these groups have against common sense and ordinary people has emboldened them to become more outward with their movements. But seeing a massive middle-aged gay superhero interact with young children where their parents aren't around? Yeah, that's not a good look, DC. But whether DC promotes this stuff doesn't really seem to matter anyway, since even James Gunn, who's in charge of DC's movies now, even openly said on Michael Rosenbaum's podcast that he would hate to be a comic writer these days. James Gunn's reasoning being that comic writers these days very often don't even make much money and their work is largely ignored by the general audience. But the truth is that this isn't because people don't like comics, it's because what's being made is just pushing ideology over good storytelling. Like I said in the beginning of this video, Prince Dion should be the gold standard for what woke creators should strive for. You should make compelling characters first, then make them gay or whatever second. People don't like Batman just because he's straight, but because he's strong and has many internal issues that they can relate to. The problem with things like DC Pride isn't that characters like Midnighter or Apollo are gay, but because them being gay is so blatantly the core concept of their identity. It's almost as if them being superheroes or fighting actual supervillains is secondary to them targeting children during Pride events. And it's why these characters and the books they exist within are largely left unpaid for and forgotten. Because customers are more aware now that these books don't exist to entertain, but to indoctrinate. I don't care if Apollo is gay, doesn't do nothing for me when I see Alan Scott, who was straight before, suddenly turn gay to increase DC's ESG score. The problem with things like transformers, and gay superheroes is that their sexuality and their pronouns matter more to their creators than telling compelling stories. Prince Dion absolutely shits all over characters like Apollo or RC, because being a multidimensional character with flaws will always be far more compelling than the sexuality of a character. It's why articles like Kotaku recently are getting so much heat, with this one titled, Final Fantasy XVI's Jill should be more than pretty. Kotaku says, and I quote, "While it is true and observable that being pretty is a shortcut to many things, social psychology experiments have suggested that beautiful people are often assumed to be smart and kind. It doesn't automatically elicit good video game characters, and as Jill demonstrates, it doesn't equate to effective storytelling. She is a reminder that developers need to take their video game women more seriously, beyond the obnoxious old tropes they use to stuff them into and the surface level feminism they try awkwardly to make fit. To make this possible, real women need to continue to be active and visible parts of the video game industry. Otherwise, we're stuck for eternity with characters like Princess Peach and Ashley from Resident Evil 4. Women who are pretty enough to love and root for, but too hollow to understand. But games keep refusing to let us. The industry prioritizes male gamers and characters' experiences while swearing it's changed. Recent research indicates that female characters have substantially less dialogue in games, including those like Final Fantasy X-2, in which they are protagonists than male characters. Those women are also almost always cisgender and white. So games limit their thoughts while never even giving other kinds of women the opportunity to have them. This shouldn't continue, it doesn't need to. I know that some shells have radiant milky pearls inside. And I think that Jill has more to give than Square Enix allowed her to, but even though every scene I've seen in my playthrough feels like a missed opportunity, I like her anyway. I'm glad she's beautiful. I'm just frustrated because I know her voice is more precious, end quote. The blatant bias of Kotaku's article is very evident here. They're mad that Jill isn't more prominent, but it should be stated, she's not the main character. They also say the game industry caters to men too often, which is ridiculous when games like Horizon exist, not to mention the last few Assassin's Creed games all confirm the female counterparts as the canon choice. Then of course there's the broken clock argument that Jill and characters like her are too white. When I guarantee you, if Jill was gay, Kotaku would be championing her, doubly so if she was black too. The thing is that places like Kotaku and The Gamer, which I've explored in my recent Final Fantasy videos already, are mad that a game that features only men and women as the two genders and has a cast of European ethnic people is selling like crazy and reviewing well. They're mad because 16 is the anti-woke game. It doesn't care about ESG scores or pandering. It just wants to tell a story with compelling characters, and they hate it for that. They hate that 16 wants to let its characters and story do the talking instead of pushing things like transformers and gay superheroes who never actually fight any supervillains. They're mad because 16 isn't full of fat, genderless, and miserable individuals who blame society for their problems like they do in real life, but instead features believable flawed characters with actual character development that goes beyond what they like in bed or who they can recruit to their side. In the end, my friends, the reason why nobody likes woke characters and why they never work is because they aren't designed to be characters first, but a checklist of virtue signaling nonsense designed to indoctrinate instead of just telling a good story. And that is why they will continue to lose until they are left with nothing but their hollow virtues that change as quickly as their own identities. Thank you for watching, subscribe for more in the future, and like the video to help the channel out. Have a great day as always, and I'll see you in the next one.